My name's Samantha Blake, and I had just hit my 32nd birthday. You'd think I'd be grinning while blowing out candles on a cake in that dreamy rooftop restaurant with a panoramic view of downtown Austin, the spot I'd been picturing for years. Instead, I sat there in a perfectly fitted dress, surrounded by warm candlelight and the low murmur of other diners, feeling like someone had knocked the wind out of me. Mom leaned closer, the sharp edge of her perfume cutting through the air, her voice deceptively gentle. "Sweetheart, you've always envied your brother." Something inside me splintered right then. After years of paying bills that weren't mine, being the emotional and financial anchor no one ever thanked, and swallowing insult after insult without a word, her sentence crushed whatever hope I had left that she might finally see me. "Then he can start covering his own expenses," I replied, my voice steady while my hands shook beneath the table. "If you've ever felt like your kindness was being exploited by your own family, if you've been the one keeping everything from falling apart while being told you're the problem, stick around. Share where you're listening from, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and send this to someone who needs it. I'm going to tell you exactly how I stopped being my family's safety net, and the price I paid for finally reclaiming my peace." I grew up in a working-class neighborhood just outside San Antonio. My little brother Dylan was 5 years younger, but we were inseparable. He was magnetic and impulsive, the type who could charm teachers and neighbors into anything. I was quiet, methodical, the one who fixed what broke. I believed it was my duty to keep things steady, especially after Dad walked out when I was 15 and Dylan was only 10. Mom didn't collapse in obvious ways. She still put dinner on the table, still went to church, but her eyes grew colder, sharper. And me? I stepped into the gap without anyone asking. Babysitting. Tutoring. Pulling late-night shifts at a diner before I even had my license. I covered groceries, paid my own school fees, bought Dylan's textbooks when Mom couldn't, and later, I'd do much more. That birthday night in Austin wasn't an isolated blow. It was the end of a long build, years of quiet sacrifices, swallowed words, and 100 moments when I should have said no but didn't. In the next part, I'll take you back to where it truly began, before the bitterness, before the bone-deep exhaustion, back when I thought love meant giving everything, even if nothing came back. Before the wine, the candles, and the breaking point, there was a simpler time in San Antonio. Dylan and I shared a small but safe world, a 2-bedroom house with creaky floors and a yard scattered with old toys and pecan shells. Summers meant riding bikes until the streetlights blinked on, winters meant sitting on the roof with mugs of cocoa, pretending the stars held answers. We were opposites from the start. I was the straight-A kid who color-coded her notes. Dylan was the one who forgot his homework but could win over a teacher with nothing more than a grin and a story. He could dodge chores or slip past trouble, while I quietly picked up what he dropped. It didn't bother me then, he was my little brother, and I loved him. Back then, love felt like purpose, not weight. Everything shifted the year I turned 15. I still hear the scrape of Dad's suitcase wheels dragging down the hallway, see Mom frozen at the sink with a dish half-washed. "I'll be back. We'll work it out," Dad said. But he never did. That night, something in Mom hardened. No shouting, no smashed plates, just a quiet retreat into herself. She kept smiling for the neighbors, but at home, she turned brittle. I knew without a word that I had to step in. I started babysitting within weeks. At first, it was just weekends, $15 here, $20 there. By my sophomore year, I was clocking nearly 30 hours a week between the diner and shelving books at the library. My friends went to football games and school dances. I was figuring out how to stretch grocery money and fix a leaky faucet. Dylan stayed Dylan, sleeping in, missing the bus, inventing excuses, but he also hugged me when I cried alone, cracked jokes when the bills felt suffocating, and seemed certain we'd be fine. Maybe that was the real gap between us. He had the luxury of believing things would work out. I didn't. I didn't resent him then, not really. Carrying the load felt noble, like strength. But over time, strength began to feel like silence, and silence began to feel like being erased. The first time I helped Dylan with something truly big was still years away, but the pattern had already set in. I carried us both, and no one asked if I was tired. By 18, I could run a household budget faster than most adults. While other girls my age experimented with lipstick shades or planned weekend trips, I was clipping coupons and logging every cent in a spreadsheet I'd built from scratch. Somehow, I didn't resent it back then because there was always a finish line in sight. College wasn't just some vague dream, it was my escape hatch. When the acceptance letter from the University of Texas at Austin arrived, I sat on our porch clutching the envelope like it might vanish if I let go. The paper shook in my hands, almost as if it understood how much I'd been waiting for this moment. Not only had I been accepted, but I'd earned a full ride, tuition, books, even a modest monthly stipend. It was as if someone had quietly acknowledged every graveyard shift, every skip dance, every Friday night spent working instead of laughing with friends. I turned down campus housing, even though it was free, and chose to commute nearly an hour each way to save money and stay close to Mom and Dylan. Deep down, I still believed they needed me more than I needed independence. Classes were intense, finance and economics during the day, and in the evenings I split my time between cold brew runs and building spreadsheets at my unpaid internship. I'd landed a spot at Thompson & Wells, a private wealth firm, where I fetched cappuccinos and worked on client decks in the break room during lunch. Exhausting? Absolutely. But it felt like it had meaning. A paycheck was just over the horizon. By my final semester, they offered me a junior analyst position before I even walked across the stage. At 21, I was finally breathing. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving, I was building something steady and truly mine. My first apartment was a small one-bedroom on the east side. Nothing fancy, but it was clean, safe, and mine. I furnished it entirely with second-hand finds, a dining table from Craigslist that I stripped and refinished myself, mismatched chairs I painted over weekends. There was no dishwasher, no in-unit laundry, but I guarded it like it was priceless, because to me it was. Around then, Dylan started his freshman year at Texas State, majoring in communications. I wasn't sure he had a clear plan, but his calls were usually lighthearted, until one day, he sounded frantic. "I can't buy my books this semester," he said. "Mom's tapped out." That night, I wired him $550 without hesitation. He promised to pay me back after midterms, swearing he'd pick up a part-time job. And in that moment, I believed him. What I didn't realize was that this single act of generosity was the start of a cycle I'd spend years trying to break. That first transfer didn't just feel okay, it felt right. I was the older sister, the one who always had a plan. If I could help him stay in school, why wouldn't I? And for a while, he was thankful. After that, the asks started small. A birthday gift for Mom he couldn't afford, I covered it, and he said he'd split it later. A busted radiator on his old Corolla that cost about $420, so he wouldn't miss class. A deposit for his first off-campus apartment. Each reason was valid. Each felt temporary. And I wanted to believe him. I remember one afternoon vividly. I'd just gotten home from work, heels dangling in one hand, laptop bag in the other, when Dylan called. He was cheerful, asked if I could spot him for a concert ticket he'd forgotten he'd bought. "It's just $110. I'll pay you back Friday." Friday came and went. So did the next one. Eventually, I stopped following up. I told myself it didn't matter. I was doing fine, at least on paper. By 27, I was a senior associate at Thompson & Wells, managing portfolios for high-net-worth clients and holding my own in rooms where no one expected me to be. My credit was strong, my savings healthy. But under the neat financial picture was a truth I didn't want to look at. I'd begun to resent my own generosity. Dylan graduated, moved back to Austin, and took a job in social media marketing. The pay wasn't much, but he loved it, said it was a stepping stone. I was genuinely happy for him. But the pattern didn't break, it deepened. His birthday gifts somehow cost more than the ones I bought myself. He needed grocery money until his paycheck hit. Rent ran late once, then twice. I stepped in every time, often without him even asking, because that's what I'd always done. I told myself I was being kind, being family. But deep down, I knew I wasn't helping him grow, I was just keeping him from falling. And every time I reached for my wallet, something inside me pulled tighter. I didn't see it yet, but my kindness had become a leash, and I was the one being tugged along. About half a year before my 32nd birthday, Dylan lost his job. We were sitting on the balcony of my apartment in Austin late one Thursday night, the city lights sparkling in the distance. I'd opened a bottle of wine to celebrate a client win, but his expression stayed flat. "They're restructuring," he said, peeling the label from his beer. "Cut half the content team." My chest sank, but I kept my tone calm. "What's your plan?" "I've got savings. I'll be fine. The job market's hot, Give me 2 weeks tops. I wanted to believe him. So I did. But 2 weeks turned into a month, then nearly 2. His Instagram still showed rooftop drinks, hill country hikes, late-night takeout from places that weren't cheap. When I asked gently how the search was going, he said he was being selective, that corporate culture wasn't his vibe. Then the calls started coming. First, it was rent. His trendy one-bedroom in East Austin ran almost $1,800 a month. Just until I get something solid, he said. I hate asking. I sent the money. A few weeks later, his car got repossessed. I meant to make the payment, he said, voice shaking. But rent wiped me out, and rideshares are killing me. That same week, I co-signed for a used Toyota Camry at 8.9% interest. It's temporary, nothing fancy, just something to get me back on my feet, he promised. I smiled while writing the check for the down payment, but inside, it felt heavy. And it didn't stop. I began to notice Dylan had been on my Spotify, my Netflix, even my phone plan for years. $10 here, $30 there, nothing I'd ever tracked. But those small amounts always add up. When I mentioned it, he looked genuinely confused. We're family, he said with a laugh. I guess Dylan thought it was just understood. Then came the utilities. He asked me to put his electric, gas, and internet on my autopay, just for a month or 2. My head screamed no, my heart stayed silent, and my hands went ahead and typed in the payment info like they'd been doing it for a lifetime, because in a way they had. The most absurd moment? A week before my birthday, Dylan texted asking if he could borrow $180 to buy me a surprise gift. I stared at the screen half laughing, half stunned by the irony, but I sent it anyway. At that point, what was another $180 on top of everything else? It's strange how resentment works. It creeps in quietly, collecting in the corners of your life like dust you don't notice until a certain light catches it. And that light was about to hit me square in the eyes. By the time my birthday week rolled around, my bank account looked fine on paper. But I'd stopped joining my team for our Friday sushi lunches at Thompson & Wells. Our tradition was sashimi and steak rolls at the spot downstairs. Lately, I'd been showing up with leftovers in Tupperware, brushing it off as part of a health kick. Jessica, one of my colleagues, shot me a sideways grin as she unpacked her bento box. Budgeting for wedding season, she teased. I forced a quick smile. Something like that. She didn't push, but I knew she noticed. People always do when you start shrinking. My best friend Riley saw through me faster. We were outside our favorite cafe on South Congress, sipping cold brew under a patio umbrella, when she squinted at me. You look tired. I laughed. Thanks. I mean it, Sam. You're pale, your eyes are puffy, and I haven't seen you wear mascara in weeks. What's going on? Is it work? I stalled, stirring my coffee like the foam might have answers. Then she leaned in. Is it Dylan again? That question hit me like a punch. I changed the subject because the truth was worse than I wanted to say out loud. The night before, I checked my credit score for the first time in months. Down 38 points. My credit card, the one I'd always paid in full, was now carrying a balance, with interest piling up quietly in the background like a slow leak. All because I couldn't bring myself to say one simple word, no. I'd coached clients through setting boundaries, through layoffs, divorces, even death. I'd lectured them about healthy debt ratios and emotional spending. Yet I couldn't say no to my own brother, a man who hadn't paid me back in years. Then came the call from Dylan, not to apologize, not to check in, but to ask if he could bring his girlfriend to my birthday dinner. Amber's basically family, he said when I hesitated. She's dying to try Café Matilda. I recalculated the reservation in my head, 9 people, about $88 a head, plus drinks. Sure, I said, while also transferring him another $180 so he could buy me a birthday gift. The irony burned. And just to round it out, Mom called the next morning. Did you order chocolate ganache for the cake? She asked. You know it's Dylan's favorite. I like vanilla bean, I reminded her. She paused. Well, chocolate would make everyone happy, don't you think? I changed the order, paid the $45 rush fee, and sat on the edge of my bed staring at the floor like it might give me a way out. Somewhere between my giving and their expectations, I had disappeared. As I sat on hold with the bakery, changing my own cake to suit Dylan's taste. I thought about all the birthdays before this one. His 21st? A sleek downtown club, private table, bottle service, velvet rope. I dropped about $280 on the night. His 25th? A weekend at Lake Travis. I rented the Airbnb, planned the whole itinerary, even bought matching t-shirts for the group. He posted a thank you story on Instagram without tagging me. Mine? Always practical, a slow cooker, noise-canceling headphones for office days. Last year, Mom gave me a budgeting journal. I smiled politely, then cried in the shower that night. Growing up, it had been the same pattern. Dylan got the shiny things, I got the useful ones. And if I ever questioned it, I was told, "You're the successful one, you don't need much. You've got your life together." As if stability disqualified me from wanting to be celebrated. My apartment was proof of that quiet sacrifice. Cozy, but built piece by piece. The couch was a floor model I waited months to afford. The dining table was one I sanded and stained myself on a weekend I should have rested. I lived smart because no one else was there to help me, and somewhere along the way, I stopped buying things I wanted, because I was always preparing for Dylan's next emergency. That week, I opened my financial spreadsheet. There was a tab labeled Dylan. It wasn't new, it had just grown. I scrolled. Rent. Car insurance. Grocery deliveries. Birthday gifts for Mom from both of us. And then I saw the total, $39,760 in less than 2 years. I stared until my vision blurred. That was a down payment on a house. 2 dream vacations. A year of therapy. Dental work. Freedom, all gone quietly, without so much as a thank you. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, the Austin skyline glowing outside my window. My inbox pinged with the bakery receipt, chocolate ganache, everyone's favorite, except mine. It was such a small thing, but it felt like the final straw. Somewhere between that spreadsheet and that cake order, I knew this year had to be different. I got to Café Matilda half an hour early. It was one of those rare spring nights in Austin when the breeze is soft and the lights make the city look like a postcard. The host led me to our rooftop table, white linens, crystal votives, a view worth every penny. I'd dreamed of this place for years, and now I was finally here. All I wanted was for it to feel like mine. Mom arrived 15 minutes late, kissing my cheek like we were brunching in some Nancy Meyers movie. Her bag caught my eye, a deep burgundy Prada satchel I'd bookmarked online more times than I'd admit. I smiled more than I wanted to admit when Mom held up her new bag. "Oh, this?" She beamed when I complimented it. "Dylan helped me pick it out, he's got such great taste." My jaw ached from forcing the smile. Dylan and Amber drifted in 45 minutes late, no apology, no explanation. Just an animated recap of a quick shopping detour and complaints about the valet. Amber tossed her coat over the chair, flashing new designer boots. 60% off, basically free, she chirped. I didn't need a calculator to know basically free was at least $580, more than my entire electric bill last month. The same bill I'd covered for both of us. When the server came for drink orders, Dylan patted his pockets. "Ugh, think I forgot my wallet. You got me right, Sam? I'll Venmo you." I didn't answer, just handed over my card. The same card now carrying a balance for the first time in my adult life. Over appetizers, my eyes caught the watch on his wrist, stainless steel, bold blue face. "Expensive." When I asked, he tugged his sleeve down. "Just a little upgrade," he laughed. Mom, meanwhile, hung on his every word. She laughed too loudly at his jokes and cut me off mid-sentence when I mentioned my promotion. "Oh, that's nice, sweetheart," she said, turning straight back to Dylan. "Tell everyone about that podcast idea you had." When someone suggested a family photo, she insisted Dylan stand in the middle and nudged me to the edge. "The lighting's better over here," she said when I hesitated. It wasn't about lighting, it never was. And in that moment, I flashed back to a Christmas when I was 12. Dylan unwrapped a brand new game console while I got earrings. The same week, my babysitting money, exactly the price of that console, mysteriously vanished. I let it go then because his smile was huge and Mom looked so proud. But I never forgot. As Outrace arrived, Dylan and Amber were huddled over his phone, giggling. "Jet skis," she whispered. "Lake house." Dylan deserves a break, Mom said beside me. Job hunting is exhausting. I nodded slowly, but the candles on the table threw the truth into sharp relief. I was paying for his vacation, his rent, his wine, his life. And it was still never enough. The cake was gorgeous, 3 tiers of chocolate ganache, gold-dusted edges, fresh berries like jewels. It could have been in a wedding magazine. I should have felt proud, seen, loved. Instead, I just felt worn thin. As the servers gathered, candles flickering, I leaned forward to make a wish, and Mom's voice slid in, sweet as syrup, sharp as a blade. You've always been jealous of Dylan, she whispered, smiling for the photo like nothing had happened. The words didn't sting like an insult. They landed like a truth she'd carried for years. Jealous, as if every dollar, every hour, every compromise had been rooted in envy, not love. As if it had always been about him. I looked around the table. Dylan laughing with Amber, cocktail in hand. Mom glowing with pride. And me, the one who paid for the cake, the wine, the room, sitting in the shadows again. Something inside me didn't shatter. It crystallized. Sharp and sudden. I knew then it would never stop unless I stopped it. Then let him pay his own bills, I said quietly. Mom blinked, unsure she'd heard me. I repeated louder, let Dylan pay his own bills, starting tonight. The conversations nearby slowed. The clinking of forks against plates faded. Even the candles seemed to pause. Sam, Dylan laughed nervously, what are you talking about? Your rent, I said. $1,700 a month for the last half year. Your car payment. Your phone line on my plan. Netflix. Hulu. Spotify. Your electric, gas, internet. The credit card I added you to. Groceries. Birthday gifts you co-signed but never paid for, all of it. My voice was calm. Too calm. I'm shutting it down. Tonight. Amber's eyes widened. You pay all his bills, she whispered. She's exaggerating, Dylan said quickly. Sam just helped out while I looked for work. No big deal. $39,760, Dylan. The number sliced through the air like glass. That's not helping. That's enabling. Sam, Mom hissed, this is inappropriate. You're making a scene, on your birthday. Yes, I said, standing. And for once, I'm giving myself a gift that matters, freedom. She reached for my hand. You're upset. We can talk later, privately. No, I said, pulling back. I've been quiet in private for years. I'm done. Dylan's face was pale. But rent's due next week. The car. I know, I said. That's your problem now. I laid 3 crisp hundreds on the table, enough to cover dinner, the tip, and my dignity. Then I picked up my purse and walked away, leaving the candles burning, the cake untouched, and the old story of who I'd been behind me. The air outside Café Matilda was cool and cleaner than I remembered. I walked to my car without glancing back, not at the glowing rooftop, not at the flickering candles, not at Dylan's baffled expression or Mom's tight jaw. My phone buzzed in my purse. Again. And again. And again. But I didn't check my phone, not yet. Instead, I drove aimlessly through downtown Austin, letting the chatter of talk radio and the rhythm of traffic lights blur out the noise in my head. I didn't feel triumphant. Not angry. Not even sad. I felt free, and absolutely terrified. When I got home, I slipped off my heels, pulled on soft sweats, and opened my laptop. The glow of the screen lit my living room, and I just sat there for a moment, letting the weight of what I was about to do settle in. First stop. Rent. There it was, $1,750 automatically scheduled each month to Highland Park Apartments, with Dylan Harper rent, neatly typed in the memo line. Cancel series. A warning popped up. Are you sure you want to stop this recurring payment? Yes. Without hesitation. Then the utilities, electric, gas, internet, each tied to my cards on separate portals. I'd memorized all his logins years ago because he never bothered. One by one, I deleted my payment info, took screenshots, and set service transfers back to him. One site warned, service may be interrupted within 3 days if alternate payment isn't received. Not my problem anymore. The phone plan came next. Dylan had been on my family account since college. Nearly 8 years of shared data, overages, and me quietly covering it all. I logged in, removed him as an authorized user, and submitted the transfer request. User must establish separate account within 5 days to maintain service. The screen read. Good. Let him handle it. Then came the credit card. I called the company, somehow still open near midnight. I need to remove an authorized user immediately, I told the rep. And issue me a new card. No questions, no judgment, just action. I appreciated that. Last step, the spreadsheet. I opened the tab labeled Dylan. Rows of transactions, dates, and categories filled the screen. I selected them all and hit delete. The page went blank, and for the first time in years, my budget showed a surplus instead of a deficit. It wasn't just money. It was air, space, a future. By 2 a.m., it was done. Every connection, every tether, cut. I closed the laptop, crawled into bed, and sank into the mattress like my body finally remembered how. I didn't just rest, I slept. Deep, dreamless, peaceful. Because for once, I wasn't carrying anyone but myself. Morning light filtered through my blinds, soft and gold, a gentle contrast to the storm brewing on my phone. 25 missed calls. 40 unread texts. 15 emails. My lock screen lit up like it was panicking on my behalf. I didn't open them right away. I made coffee. Fed the cat. Pulled my hair into a bun. Pretended it was any other morning, except it wasn't. The messages followed a pattern I could have scripted. From Dylan, confusion, what happened last night? Irritation, you actually cancelled the rent? Panic, the landlord called, and the utilities too. Are you trying to ruin my life? And finally guilt, please just cover this month, I swear I'll figure it out. From Mom, voicemail after voicemail, her tone swinging between sharp and trembling. How could you humiliate your brother like that? You think money makes you better? He's your family, Samantha. This isn't love, it's cruelty. There was no space for my side of the story. Amber went public, of course. Vague Instagram stories, captions dripping with passive aggression. Some people only give so they can take later. Watch for those people. Mutual friends started texting, hey, what happened with Dylan? You okay? I saw Amber's post, seemed intense. I ignored almost all of it. I didn't owe anyone a PR statement. But one message stopped me. Brent, Dylan's old college roommate. Honestly, been waiting years for someone to cut him off. Tough love is still love. Stay strong, Sam. It stuck with me, not because it justified what I'd done, but because it reminded me I wasn't crazy. Somewhere along the way, helping had become hiding my exhaustion, my boundaries, my own voice. After a long shower and a second coffee, I did something I'd been putting off for years. I called a locksmith. The emergency spare key I'd given Dylan had turned into a quiet invasion. Food missing, furniture moved, a sweater gone, a charger missing, a door left ajar. $300 and a new deadbolt later, I felt something I hadn't in years. Safe. By Monday, I took one more step. I booked a session with a financial advisor, not for my investments, but for me. Barbara listened as I told her everything, the debt, the depletion, the guilt. She didn't flinch. She just nodded and said, you're in better shape than you think. 6 months of clean budgeting, and you're back on track. Her calmness felt like a rope thrown into deep water, and I grabbed it, because I was finally swimming for myself. That weekend was the first in years without an emergency. No panicked texts from Dylan. No surprise charges. No guilt creeping into every purchase. Just silence. At first, it felt strange, like waking up in a house after the refrigerator hum has stopped. Unnerving, because you've grown used to the noise. But then I realized, this silence was mine. I celebrated quietly. Dinner for one at a little bistro off South Lamar I used to love. The kind of place where the servers remembered your order and the music never drowned out your thoughts. I ordered mushroom risotto and a glass of wine. For once, I didn't think about how it might affect someone else's rent or car note. I just enjoyed it. And it felt radical. Healing. The following Wednesday, I was mid-client pitch when the receptionist at Thompson & Wells buzzed my line. Sorry to interrupt, she whispered, but Dylan Harper is in the lobby. and he refuses to leave. My stomach dropped. I excused myself, walked to the front, and found him pacing by the elevators, face flushed, hair messy, eyes wild. You need to fix this, he blurted. They're shutting off the power tomorrow. The landlord's threatening eviction. What the hell, Sam? I'm at work, I said evenly. This isn't the place. Well, where is? He snapped. You've blocked me, ignored me, cut me off. What am I supposed to do? You're supposed to be 30 years old, I said, my voice low but steady. I'm supposed to figure it out? I replied, my voice even. That's exactly right. His tone jumped an octave. I don't have a job, Samantha. That's not new, I said, steady as stone. And it's not my fault. Security approached, hands at their sides, no need to touch him, just a silent wall of consequence. Dylan glanced at them, then at me, and for a fleeting moment I saw it, the recognition that I wasn't stepping in this time. That the net was gone. They walked him out, not rough but firm. Exactly the way I should have done years earlier. Back at my desk, I half expected side eyes or whispered judgments. Instead, co-workers stopped by one at a time. Jessica left a coffee on my desk with a sticky note, "You've been carrying something. I'm glad you put it down." It hit me then, people notice more than we think, especially when we start showing up differently. That night, I lit a candle, curled up on my couch, and exhaled. No one needed rescuing. Not tonight. Not anymore. A week after the scene in my office, Mom hosted a family dinner. My absence wasn't even acknowledged with an invite. No surprise. But later that night, my cousin Natalie called, something she'd never done without texting first. "I just wanted you to know what was said at dinner," she said slowly. "Let me guess," I said, bracing. "I'm the villain?" Natalie sighed. "Dylan told everyone you blindsided him. Said you cut him off without warning and left him on the edge of being homeless." "And Mom?" "She backed him up," Natalie admitted. "But not everyone agreed with them." I thanked her, and after we hung up, I sat with the silence. It didn't burn the way it used to. Something in me had shifted. I no longer needed their approval to feel steady. Still, it mattered to be seen. The next day, I made 2 calls. The first was to Dr. Eliza Coleman, a therapist my financial advisor had recommended months ago. I'd bookmarked her site but never clicked schedule, until now. We had our first session that Thursday. Mostly intake, background, family history, goals. But even in just speaking the words aloud, the patterns, the guilt, the years of financial codependency, things started to clear. "You've been playing a caretaker role that goes far beyond what's healthy between siblings," she said gently. "It might have begun as love, but it became something else. Something unsustainable." The second call was to Riley, the friend I'd kept at arm's length since the birthday dinner. She'd seen the cracks long before I did. We met for coffee at our old spot off Barton Springs, and I laid it all out, every dollar, every month, every just this once. Her eyes widened. "I knew it was bad," she whispered. "But I didn't know it was this bad." "Neither did I admitted. "Not until I saw the spreadsheet. Not until I stopped." She didn't try to fix it or sugarcoat it. She just listened. And that, more than anything, was what I needed. Over the next few weeks, I began reclaiming pieces of myself I'd put on the shelf for years. I rejoined my old book club. Said yes to a weekend wine trip with coworkers. Bought a last-minute ticket to a local theater show. Little things. Small joys. But they felt enormous, because every dollar I spent was mine. Every decision, my own. Slowly, I was remembering the woman I'd been before I became the family's safety net. About 3 weeks after that disastrous birthday, a number I didn't recognize popped up. I let it roll to voicemail but checked it almost immediately. "Hi, this is Greg Whitman, property manager at Highland Park Apartments. Dylan Hopper listed you as his emergency contact. We've begun the formal eviction process due to non-payment. Just thought you should know." His tone was flat, not unkind, just the kind of weary you hear from someone who's listened to too many excuses. I didn't call back. There was nothing to explain. Nothing to fix. Later that night, my phone lit up again. "Mom." My thumb hovered over decline, but something in me said answer. How can you live with yourself? She demanded the second I said hello. I stayed quiet, letting her fill the silence. Your brother is about to be homeless, Samantha. Homeless. And you, with your good job, your nice apartment, your savings, you're just letting it happen. I took a slow breath. I didn't let it happen, I said evenly. I let him face the consequences of his choices. That's different. You've always been cold, she shot back. I used to think you were just practical, but this is cruelty. What she meant was, you stopped playing the role I wanted you in. What she couldn't say was, you stopped funding the family fantasy. I've sent Dylan links to rental assistance programs and job postings, I said. He has options. He's your brother, she repeated, like that erased the $39,000, the missed birthdays, the tears I'd kept hidden. Yes, I said softly. He is. And I love him. But loving someone doesn't mean protecting them from growth. Silence. Then the quiet click of a call ending, not dramatic, just final. I sat there, phone still in my hand, waiting for the guilt to come. It didn't. What rose instead wasn't defiance or righteousness. It was clarity. And peace. The next day, an unexpected voice came through my phone. Uncle Mark, my dad's younger brother, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. I heard about the family drama, he said slowly. Your dad would have been proud of you. He always worried Dylan was being coddled. He'd be glad someone finally stepped up. I didn't cry. But something in me loosened. The tight grip of trying to be understood by people who had no interest in understanding me, finally gone. 2 months after walking out of my own birthday dinner, my life had shifted in quiet, steady ways. No lightning bolt moments, no grand cinematic ending, just small, consistent changes. My budget spreadsheet looked different now, no Dylan tab, no surprise withdrawals. Just clean numbers, clear categories, and for the first time in months, a shrinking credit card balance. I paid more than the minimum on my credit card and watched the interest finally stop chewing away at me. I even made my first deposit back into savings, not a huge sum, but enough to feel like planting a flag on land I'd forgotten belonged to me. I started browsing vacation options. Nothing extravagant, maybe a long weekend in Santa Fe, or a cabin tucked into the Texas Hill Country. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere mine. I hadn't let myself even imagine that in years, because for so long, my money hadn't felt like mine at all. It had always been ours. His. The family's. Now, I was making space for me again. Updates about Dylan trickled in slowly, like weather reports from another city. First through friends, then through family. He'd taken a retail job, stockroom associate, at a department store outside Austin. Not glamorous, but steady. Mom called it beneath him, and said it was just temporary. I saw it differently. He showed up. He earned his own check. That mattered. Amber, predictably, was gone. Her Instagram filled with Tulum sunsets, a new boyfriend in a Gucci tracksuit, and captions about healing through elevation. Dylan's own socials went quiet. No more brunch spreads by the pool, no more borrowed luxury. Just stillness. And maybe, growth. At a cousin's wedding, I saw him for the first time since everything had detonated. Mom kept her distance, introducing me to relatives like I was some polite acquaintance, not her daughter. But other family members? They'd noticed the shift. Over dessert, Aunt Linda leaned close. That whole birthday thing? At first, I thought you'd overreacted. Then I heard how much you'd actually been covering. Honestly, Sam, I'd have snapped way sooner. I didn't respond, just nodded. Because finally, some of them were starting to see. Not all. But enough. Enough to know I hadn't been crazy. I'd just been done. 3 months after I cut every cord, a message from Dylan popped up. No preamble, no emoji-filled apology. Just, got promoted to shift lead. Starting a financial literacy class at the community college next month. Not asking for anything. Just thought you should know. I sat staring at those lines for a good 20 minutes, not because I doubted them, but because I didn't. It didn't read like manipulation. It didn't feel like bait. It felt honest. I typed slowly, congratulations on both. That's genuinely great news, Dylan. I'm proud of you. No offer of money. No invitation to reopen old doors. Just acknowledgement and respect. And to my surprise, he didn't push. No follow-up. No "can you help with this one last thing?" Just silence, the good kind. A few weeks later, Easter at my aunt's place in Round Rock was the first family holiday since everything changed. The air was still taut, like it could snap with the wrong comment, but there was something else in it too, restraint. Dylan arrived in a used Honda. No amber. No flashy labels. Just him. He helped set the table, brought a casserole, laughed quietly with cousins. He didn't dominate the conversation. Didn't perform. And for the first time, he looked grounded. Like someone who knew exactly what a utility bill was. Like someone who'd earned humility the hard way. During dinner, someone asked about Christmas plans. Mom jumped in immediately, "Well, Samantha usually handles." But Dylan cut her off. "Maybe we should all contribute what we can this year. Split things a bit more evenly." He didn't look at me, but he didn't have to. The whole table paused for just a beat, like the family balance had shifted one small degree closer to center. It wasn't reconciliation. Not yet. But it was acknowledgement. And sometimes, that's the real starting point for healing. 6 months after walking out of my own birthday dinner, my life didn't just look different, it felt different. The chaos had stopped. The demands, the constant financial triage, the emotional whiplash of being the family fixer gone. In their place was stillness. And in that stillness, I began building something new. My credit card was fully paid off. My emergency fund was back where it had been years ago. I set up automatic retirement contributions. At my last meeting, Barbara, my advisor, tapped the table gently and said, "You're exactly where you need to be." And for once, I believed her. The changes weren't just on a spreadsheet. My apartment transformed too. I painted the living room a soft sage that made the space feel warm and intentional. I bought bookshelves and finally unpacked the novels that had been boxed for years. Hung art from a local gallery. Brought in plants I actually remembered to water. I swapped my chipped coffee maker for one I loved, added a plush rug, and bought matching wine glasses, because I deserved beauty, not just function. The space wasn't just comfortable. It reflected my worth. Dylan was still finding his footing. He'd moved into a small 2-bedroom in North Austin with roommates. No balcony, no fancy view, linoleum floors, but it was clean. Quiet. His. Everything inside, down to the thrifted dining table he refinished, belonged to him. He was budgeting, paying rent on time, even saving. Supervising inventory. Training new hires. Considering night classes. It wasn't perfect. But it was real. One Saturday morning, we met for coffee at a cafe halfway between our places, the first time we'd sat alone together since everything. After a few minutes of light conversation, Dylan stared into his mug. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "I took your help for granted. I thought, I don't know, that it was just what you did. And the worst part? I didn't even stop to ask if it was okay. I didn't rush to forgive. Didn't jump in to ease the discomfort. I just listened. What changed?" I asked eventually. He let out a breath, half laughing. "Having the lights shut off in the middle of January will do that. And, ramen gets old real fast." I smiled, not at the struggle, but at the honesty. Because, for the first time, he wasn't performing. He was just showing up, like a grown man, like a brother, like someone actually trying. It took far longer to rebuild boundaries with my mother than it did to repair my finances. With money, the rules were clean. Numbers didn't lie. Balance sheets didn't talk back. Budgets never gaslit you. But with her, it was messier. She called less now. And when she did, our conversations were stiff, almost rehearsed, weather updates, holiday logistics, gossip about relatives I hadn't seen since 8th grade. I played along for a while, polite and neutral. But every call left my temples aching, every visit making my stomach knot. Because even when she didn't say it out loud, her tone still carried the same quiet accusation: "You've changed. You're selfish now. You let him suffer." And every single time, I had to remind myself, letting go of dysfunction isn't selfish. It's survival. The final straw came on an ordinary Thursday. She forwarded me an email from her HOA about upcoming fees. No subject line. No message. Just the bill. I stared at it for a full minute before closing my laptop. Then I picked up the phone. "Mom, I'm not paying this," I said the moment she answered. "And I won't be paying anything else going forward." Silence. Then her voice, tight and wounded. "So that's it? After everything I've done for you?" I could have reminded her about the years I'd covered groceries, rent, Dylan's tuition, birthday parties, vet bills, prescriptions, but I didn't. Because this wasn't about proving my case anymore. "I love you," I said calmly. "But love doesn't mean enabling. You're capable. And if you're not, then it's time to figure out how to be." She didn't reply. Just hung up. Not a dramatic slam, just a quiet click, like a door that was never going to open the same way again. I stood in my kitchen, phone still in my hand, and waited for guilt to creep in. It never came. What arrived instead was relief. Not because I'd rejected her, but because I'd finally chosen me. And that feeling stayed. Weeks passed. No more surprise requests. No more forwarded bills. Just quiet. Almost too quiet at first, but in that stillness, I found something I hadn't had in years: clarity, peace, and room to breathe without the weight of everyone else's survival pressing on my chest. One calm Sunday evening, golden light stretched across my sage-green living room walls, and it hit me mid-sip of tea. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. My boundaries weren't just lines I'd drawn, they'd become the framework for something solid. A life built with intention, not obligation. The silence from my mother had faded into background noise, the kind you stop noticing entirely. Dylan and I still messaged occasionally, swapping short updates and small wins. He stayed on his feet. More importantly, he stayed accountable. No handouts. No guilt-laced, just this once requests. Just mutual respect. It wasn't the sibling bond one once imagined. But it was real. Adult. And that mattered more. A few weeks later, I hosted a small dinner at my place. 5 people, no family. Just friends who had shown up during the chaos, who'd sat with me on the bathroom floor, poured wine without judgment, and never once asked me to justify my worth. We ate pasta, told stories, laughed until our cheeks hurt. At one point I looked around, candlelight dancing across the walls, jazz humming in the background, and felt something I hadn't felt in years: safe. Not because anyone had promised to protect me, but because I'd finally chosen to protect myself. Later, as we boxed up leftovers, my friend Vanessa lingered. "You know," she said, tucking containers into the fridge, "you're lighter now." I raised an eyebrow. "Lighter?" She smiled. Not in a weight way, in a soul way. Like you finally put something heavy down. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. She was right. After she left, I curled up on the couch with a blanket and whispered to the quiet room, I did it. Not out of arrogance, but out of awe. Because I had spent so many years believing that choosing myself would mean losing everyone. And yet here I was, surrounded by better love, stronger peace, and a future I was excited to step into. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that healing doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it shows up quietly, in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon when you catch yourself smiling while folding laundry. Sometimes it's walking past your phone and not bracing for the next draining message. Sometimes it's seeing your reflection and realizing your eyes don't look worn from overgiving but clear. Free. I used to think being the responsible one was noble. That sacrifice equaled love, and love meant carrying the weight. But now I know, love without boundaries isn't love. It's obligation. It's erosion, slow, silent, until you look up one day and realize the life you're living doesn't feel like it's yours at all. Choosing myself wasn't easy. I lost people. I disappointed expectations. I dismantled the version of me my family depended on. But in the wreckage, I found something solid. Truth. Stillness. Joy in simplicity. Strength in the word no. And I realized something else. People who love you for what you do will always need you to keep doing. But the ones who love you for who you are? They'll celebrate when you rest. They'll honor your boundaries. They'll pour you tea instead of just taking what's yours. I'm not perfect. I still feel the old pull sometimes. I still hear guilt knocking, asking if I've done enough. But now I answer it differently. I remind myself, showing up for my own life isn't selfish. It's sacred.